One of my favorite people from Twitter, one of my favorite people from Turning Point USA. He's got a fantastic podcast, which we're going to talk about as well here in just a minute. And I've been following this whole thing with the truckers in Canada and everything else, and he's got more information than anybody. It's Jack Posobiec. Jack, hey, thanks so much for being here. How are you?
Hey, Mark, thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, real quick, we got to talk about crack pipes. Do you know about this new crack pipe initiative with Joe Biden, $30 million to replace dirty old crack pipes with new clean ones? You've heard about that, I assume.
No, I don't want to be accused of spreading misinformation, so let's get it right.
Okay.
This is a harm reduction grant offered by the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, which does include safe smoking kits and supplies. It's just safe smoking.
It's just safe smoking. You're right. I apologize. And thank you. And this is why I'm glad that you're on, because when it comes to spreading misinformation, you're the guy. Well, according to your Wikipedia page, you're the guy that does it most. But you're the guy that I know knows how to get around it. Listen, this is really 2022 has got to be, for you, for me, for anyone that does this for a living, one of the wildest rides so far. And it's only February. Not only do we have free crack pipes going out, not only do we have Russia-Ukraine 2.0, but this thing going on in Canada. You were the first person I saw tweet that it's about to get Cuban in Ottawa. It's about to get full Castro. Is that something you're still hearing?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to understand what's going on with this Canadian situation here is that, of course, the Premier of Alberta just came out last night and said that he's going to be dropping some of the mandates in Alberta. And Alberta's kind of like the Texas of Canada, right? That's oil and gas country, a lot of ranchers up there, a lot of cattle, beef production. But for the rest of Canada, which of course Trudeau is the prime minister, it doesn't seem like he's following common sense. Common sense would be, okay, if these guys are holding up bridges, if they're not blocking your capital, right, you'd send some mediator down. You'd try to come up with some kind of deal, say, look, can we do something to just get this to stop this getting him? But Trudeau doesn't do that. He goes down to the floor of House of Commons in Ottawa and called them all swastika-waving xenophobes and racists, and is just digging his heels in on this. And I think that Trudeau is a committed, true believer to this whole project, whether you want to call it the Great Reset or get into all that or anything else. He is a true believer, and he's digging his heels in because it's not about mandates anymore. It's about power. It's about who has power in society. Is it the elites or is it the people? And Trudeau knows that if he allows the people to get their way, then this is going to spread from country to country like a prairie fire.
And this is something that I heard you say on your podcast the other day, which I thought was really fascinating. By the way, Human Events Daily is the podcast. You mentioned that because a lot of people, in fact, we had a guy call in yesterday and say it's the more divided than it's ever been. And we hear people say we're divided economically, we're divided racially, we're divided by political ideology. But you're claiming that it's a division between the elites and everybody else, and that this whole situation in Canada proves it, because the common folk are all banding together and the elites are the ones that are really kind of holding them down.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why you're seeing Trudeau file the same kind of strategy that you've seen since time immemorial, of finding a scapegoat, of demonizing a group of people, blaming everything on them, saying, and so that he can go to the people and say, no, it's not me who's the cause of all this. You know, Joe Biden says it's not. It's the same thing that when Joe Biden said that we were in a pandemic of the unvaccinated, even though the numbers didn't show it. Right? He said this is all the unvaccinated, a winter of death that, of course, never happened, or middle of winter. I haven't seen the winter of death. But he's blaming all of his woes on a group of people, and they're hoping that they can divide the populace up enough that enough people will buy it and then will side with the elites to at least allow them to skate through before anybody else can gain that real critical mass to actually face an opposition. But this is why, by the way, the truckers have presented a strategic problem. This is real fifth-generation warfare. We're seeing narrative trench warfare in real time playing out, that the truckers are a strategic national asset for any country, just inherently themselves. The trucks are. And they say there's a line out there, amateurs talk strategy, professionals talk logistics. How are you going to get rid of all those trucks? Even if you arrest all the truckers, right? The trucks are all still there. They pump the air brakes. The tow truckers won't even come in because a trucker is a trucker. So the logistics of trying to stop this are mind-boggling. It doesn't work. It falls apart. And they know that because our supply chains are already creaky, if they apply pressure in the proper way that they're doing right now, they actually have all the leverage. And you know what? Trudeau knows it.
Jack Posobiec, there's one thing you said which I think is really poignant and people need to understand when it comes to power, because, you know, I mentioned yesterday, look, now it's the truckers saying we're against these vax mandates, and look what's happening in Canada. What if it were the police? What if it was the military? What if all of a sudden some other group banded together and said, you know what, we're not going to really listen about that as well? And you mentioned the farmers and say that we are 9 meals from anarchy. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, so that's an old saying. It goes back to the 18th century and writings about the, you know, sort of the fall of civilization, the fall of empires. And, you know, I remember living through the Freddie Gray riots in Baltimore, which I went and covered. I remember living through Chaz in Seattle when you had an armed militant group rise up. And you really look at it, though, and we say that we're so sophisticated and we're so advanced and, you know, progressive, small p progressive, you know, from the ancients of the past.
Yeah.
But what happens when you turn the food supply off, right? You watch what happens to a society when you turn the food off. And we remember the early days of the pandemic, the early days when the lockdowns were coming and everybody flooded the supermarkets and you saw people tearing stuff off the shelves. You couldn't find you couldn't find a piece of toilet paper on the shelf. Now imagine suddenly if there's, you know, the last piece of real meat on the shelf and what's going to happen at the supermarket. So that's why I say 9 meals away from anarchy.
I mean, in some supermarkets, it's like that now, and we don't even have vax mandates for truckers. And imagine how bad it would get here. But I mean, that's something that you're right. A lot of people have to focus on. One more thing, and I know you're super busy, and there's a lot going on. There's this woman in Ottawa, some kind of councilwoman or whatever. I'm not really sure. I saw this on Newsmax the other day, but listen to what she said about the truckers and how she compared it to January 6th.
It has a lot of international elements to it. The money is flowing from the U.S.
Right.
This is right out of the Trump playbook.
It's right out of the Trump playbook, she's saying. She said it was going to be an insurrection. Do you foresee, when all this is said and done, and no matter what the outcome is, do you think that in Canada they're going to do kind of what they're trying to do here with the January 6th Commission, blaming the white supremacist terrorists who were really just Trump supporters? Do you think that Trudeau is going to try to pin this as Canada's January 6th?
I think all of the above. Yeah. I think that you are seeing an elites in decline. I think they are facing collapse. They realize it. They realize that nobody's believing them anymore, right? Yeah. But they do still have the power of the state, and they are going to wield that as most effectively as they can.
All right, fantastic. Listen, I'm going to fill out a form. I'm going to get you a crack pipe in the mail, courtesy of Joe Biden.
I want the Hunter Biden edition. Can I put in? Are there any of those left? Do I need an NFT for that or something?
You know, it's going to be $500,000 extra if you want the Hunter Biden artistic edition signed by the artist. But we'll see. Maybe we can work out a deal.